What happens when the universe's most feared criminal decides to steal Christmas from an entire galaxy? What happens when that criminal encounters something he never expected? The pure, unstoppable joy of a human child who sees wonder where others see only loss. In the cold depths of space, where empires rise and fall like distant stars, one being held the power to drain happiness itself from entire civilizations. The known as the Void Heart had perfected the art of stealing joy, turning celebration into despair with mechanical precision. For 3 centuries, he had the massive stealth ship Silence of Stars drifted through the nebula like a predator stalking its prey. Its hull, black as the void between galaxies, absorbed all light that touched it. Inside the ship's command center, the Void Heart studied holographic displays showing 12 star systems, each one marked with pulsing red indicators. Stood nearly 3 meters tall, his elongated frame draped in flowing dark robes that seemed to absorb light itself. His face was angular and sharp, with deep-set eyes that glowed with a cold blue light, where other had natural bioluminescent patterns across their skin that reflected their emotions, had surgically removed his own decades ago. He felt that emotions were weaknesses to be eliminated. The status report, commanded without turning from the displays. His voice carried the weight of absolute authority, each word precisely spoken. A smaller creature scuttled forward on 6 legs, belonged to the species known throughout the galaxy for their loyalty when properly motivated. His compound eyes reflected the holographic light as he consulted his data pad. The master, the festival suppression systems are operating at peak efficiency across all 12 systems, reported, his clicking voice filled with pride. The Jovian Harmony Festival was eliminated 3 cycles ago. The Dance of Lights was canceled last week. The celebration of seasons ended in complete despair yesterday. Nodded slowly, a thin smile crossing his features. For over 3 centuries, he had perfected what he called the Festival Elimination Protocol. It was simple in concept but devastating in execution. First, his network of spies would identify any upcoming celebration or festival across the galaxy. Then his carefully placed agents would begin spreading doubt and fear. Equipment would mysteriously malfunction. Key organizers would suddenly fall ill or disappear. Resources would become unavailable through complex market manipulations. But the true genius of system lay in its final phase. Just when hope seemed lost, when communities were on the verge of canceling their celebrations, himself would arrive with an offer of help. He would provide resources, technology, even labor to ensure the festival could proceed. Communities would welcome him as a savior. Then, on the day of celebration, when joy reached its peak, would activate his emotion harvesting array. The massive device, hidden in his ship's cargo hold, could drain positive emotions from an entire planet in minutes. Happiness, joy, wonder, hope, all of it would flow into the machine's crystalline storage chambers, leaving entire populations in a state of emotional numbness that could last for years. I had never explained to anyone why he harvested these emotions. The truth was something he barely acknowledged to himself. As a young, he had experienced a trauma so profound that it had shattered his ability to feel genuine happiness. Watching others experience joy caused him physical pain. But when he drained their emotions and stored them in his machines, he could sometimes access tiny fragments of that stolen happiness, experiencing brief moments where the ache in his chest would fade. Show me the next target, ordered. Manipulated the holographic display, zooming in on a small blue-green world orbiting a yellow star. Terra, also known as Earth Master. It's the of a relatively new spacefaring species called humans. They have recently established 3 small colonies, but this planet remains their primary population center. Intelligence indicates they are preparing for something called Christmas across their entire world. I studied the planet with interest. He had heard scattered reports about humans over the past few decades. They were apparently unusual among galactic species for their emotional extremes and their stubborn refusal to abandon hope even in the darkest circumstances. Several other galactic powers had underestimated them and paid the price. Well, what makes this Christmas significant? Asked. According to our cultural analysts, Christmas appears to be their largest celebration, explained, pulling up additional data streams. It occurs annually and involves their entire global population in synchronized gift-giving, family gatherings, and expressions of goodwill. The emotional energy generated during this celebration could be the largest single harvest in our operational history. His eyes glowed brighter as he considered the implications. A species-wide celebration involving billions of participants would generate more emotional energy than he had ever captured before. With that much stored happiness, he might finally be able to fill the hollow space in his chest permanently. A preliminary analysis suggests that humans attach unusual significance to their celebrations, continued. They appear to invest considerable emotional energy in maintaining traditions, even under adverse conditions. This could make the harvest particularly potent. Excellent, said. Begin standard infiltration protocols. I want complete intelligence on their Christmas preparations within 2 weeks. Deploy our best cultural infiltration specialists. Over the following days, this network swung into action. Shape-shifting agents assumed human identities in major population centers. Digital infiltration specialists hacked into communication networks, monitoring conversations about Christmas plans. Economic manipulation experts began subtle interventions in supply chains, creating small delays and shortages that would generate stress and doubt. The initial reports fascinated. Human Christmas preparations were unlike anything in his experience. Instead of being organized by governments or religious institutions, the celebration seemed to emerge organically from individual families and communities. Humans spent significant portions of their personal resources on gifts for others. They decorated their homes with lights and symbols. They gathered in groups to sing songs and share meals. Most puzzling of all, human children seemed to be central to the celebration. Adults would go to extraordinary lengths to maintain something called Christmas magic for young humans. They would tell elaborate stories about a mythical figure called who delivered gifts to well-behaved children. Parents would purchase gifts and hide them, allowing children to believe they came from this fictional being. The master reported during one of their daily briefings, our psychological analysis of human Christmas behavior suggests something unusual. Unlike other species we have studied, humans appear to derive joy not just from receiving positive experiences, but from providing them to others, particularly their offspring. The act of creating happiness for others seems to generate happiness in themselves. I pondered this information. In his 3 centuries of festival elimination, he had never encountered a species that seemed to create joy through giving rather than receiving. Most civilizations he had targeted, celebrated to honor their gods, mark seasonal changes, or commemorate historical events. But human Christmas seemed to exist primarily to generate happiness for its own sake. This could complicate the harvesting process, mused. If they generate joy through giving, then our standard disruption techniques might not be sufficient. We cannot simply prevent them from receiving something they expected. Shall we modify our approach, Master? Asked. No, decided after a long pause. We will proceed with the enhanced version of our standard protocol. Whatever makes humans special, it will not matter once the emotion harvesting array activates. Joy is joy, regardless of its source. As December approached on Earth, agents reported increasing activity related to Christmas preparations. Humans were purchasing gifts, decorating their homes and cities, and planning gatherings. Children were writing letters to and creating lists of desired gifts. The level of anticipation and happiness building across the planet was unlike anything had previously observed. The emotional energy readings are extraordinary, reported one evening as they monitored Earth from orbit. Our sensors are detecting joy levels that exceed our most optimistic projections. If we can harvest even a fraction of what they are generating, it will be our greatest success. I stood at the observation deck of his ship, looking down at the blue-green planet below. Thousands of city lights twinkled like stars, and his sensors could detect the elevated emotional states of billions of humans as they prepared for their celebration. The sheer volume of happiness radiating from the world was almost overwhelming. For just a moment, felt something he had not experienced in centuries: uncertainty. There was something about this planet, about these humans, that felt different from his previous targets. But he pushed the feeling aside. He had come too far and invested too much in this operation to allow doubt to interfere now. They begin the final phase, he commanded. Deploy all infiltration assets and start the disruption protocols. I want their Christmas preparations thrown into chaos within 72 hours. Once their hope begins to crumble, we will offer our assistance and position ourselves for the harvest. As his ship moved into position above Earth, felt the familiar anticipation that came before a major operation. Soon, all of that human joy would be his to command. Soon, the emptiness inside him would finally be filled. He had no way of knowing that in a small house in a small town below, a 6-year-old girl named Emma was writing a letter to, asking not for toys or treats, but for the sad-looking man in the dark ship above her house to find something to smile about for Christmas. And he certainly could not have predicted that this simple wish from one small human child would completely. Emma pressed her nose against the cold window of her bedroom, her breath fogging the glass as she stared up at the night sky. Most 6-year-olds would have been asleep hours ago, but Emma had always been different. Her parents often joked that she operated on her own special schedule, and tonight was no exception. There's something up there, Whiskers," she whispered to her stuffed cat, pointing at a dark spot among the stars that seemed to shimmer differently than the others. "Something that feels sad. The 3,000 kilometers above, infiltration protocols were proceeding exactly as planned. His agents had successfully integrated into key positions across Earth's major population centers. Manufacturing delays had begun affecting toy production in China. Shipping routes were experiencing mysterious complications. Weather control satellites owned by shell companies had started generating unseasonable storms in several regions. "The Master," reported during their morning briefing, "the disruption phase is showing excellent results. Stress levels are rising across 17% of major population centers. Gift availability has decreased by 12%. Family travel plans are being canceled at increasing rates." Nodded approvingly as he studied the data streams flowing across his command center displays. Each red indicator represented a small crack in human Christmas preparations. Individually, these disruptions seemed minor. A delayed shipment here, a power outage there, unexpected expenses forcing families to reduce their gift budgets. But understood that happiness, like any complex system, could be brought down by attacking its supporting infrastructure. Well, what about their emotional response patterns? Asked. Are we seeing the expected decline in anticipation and joy? His compound eyes flickered as he consulted his instruments. This is where we encounter some unexpected data, Master. While stress levels are indeed rising, overall happiness readings remain remarkably stable. In fact, in some regions, joy levels are actually increasing despite our disruption efforts. turned from the displays to face his lieutenant directly. Explain. Our cultural analysts believe it has something to do with how humans respond to adversity during their Christmas season, said, his voice uncertain. When their normal plans are disrupted, instead of abandoning their celebrations, they appear to adapt and find alternative methods of creating joy. Communities are organizing to help families who cannot afford gifts. Neighbors are sharing resources when shipping delays occur. Children are creating handmade presents when store-bought items become unavailable. This information troubled more than he cared to admit. In his experience, disruption led inevitably to disappointment, and disappointment led to the collapse of celebratory spirit. But humans seemed to be responding to challenges by becoming more determined to celebrate, not less. Increase the disruption intensity, ordered. Deploy the economic manipulation protocols. Create supply shortages for their traditional Christmas foods. Overload their transportation systems. I want them facing genuine hardship, not minor inconveniences. As scuttled away to implement the new orders, remained at the observation deck, studying the planet below. Through the ship's advanced sensors, he could monitor human brainwave patterns and emotional states in real time. What he saw his understanding of how sentient species should respond to systematic happiness elimination. Instead of growing darker as their Christmas plans faced obstacles, many human communities were glowing brighter in his emotional sensors. Families who couldn't afford expensive gifts were spending more time together making crafts and telling stories. Neighborhoods were organizing caroling groups and communal dinners. Children were adapting their Christmas wishes to focus on experiences rather than material possessions. In the small town of Ohio, Emma was experiencing the effects of operations firsthand. Her father's manufacturing plant had been forced to reduce hours due to supply chain disruptions, meaning fewer Christmas presents this year. The local grocery store was running low on traditional holiday food due to transportation delays. Even the town's Christmas lights display had been scaled back because of power grid irregularities. But Emma seemed completely unaffected by these setbacks. If anything, she was more excited about Christmas than ever. "Mommy," she announced over breakfast, "I had the most amazing dream last night. There was a sad man in a big ship in space, and he was trying to take Christmas away because he forgot how to be happy. But then showed me that we could give him some of our Christmas spirit, and he remembered how to smile. Emma's mother, Dr. Sarah, smiled as she poured orange juice. As a child psychologist, she was accustomed to her daughter's vivid imagination. Emma had always been unusually empathetic, often claiming she could sense other people's emotions from great distances. That sounds like a wonderful dream, sweetheart," the doctor said. "What do you think we could do to help the sad man?" Emma's face lit up with the kind of pure joy that only small children could generate. "We could invite him for Christmas dinner, and maybe we could make him a present, something that would remind him what happiness feels like." High above felt a strange sensation as the child spoke. For just a moment, his emotional sensors detected something unusual, a spike of joy so pure and focused that it seemed to reach beyond the planet's atmosphere. He checked his instruments, but they showed nothing abnormal. The sensation had lasted less than a second. He called, "Are you detecting any unusual energy emissions from the planet's surface?" His lieutenant scuttled over to check the readings. "Nothing significant, Master. Standard emotional background radiation, though the joy levels remain frustratingly stable despite our increased disruption efforts." Over the following days, agents implemented increasingly aggressive sabotage protocols. Major shipping companies experienced coordinated cyber attacks. Weather control systems generated blizzards across transportation corridors. Stock markets fluctuated wildly as economic manipulation algorithms created artificial scarcity in Christmas-related industries. The effects were immediately visible in global news reports that monitored from his ship. Christmas shopping was being severely hampered. Family travel plans were being canceled on a massive scale. Many traditional Christmas markets and festivals were being shut down due to logistical impossibilities. But instead of the despair and disappointment that expected, something else was happening. Human news broadcasts were filled with stories of communities rallying together to maintain their Christmas celebrations despite the hardships. Churches and community centers were organizing gift drives for affected families. Restaurants were offering free Christmas dinners to stranded travelers. Children were creating entertainment for each other when planned events were canceled. Most puzzling of all, emotional sensors were detecting something unprecedented. Collective joy that was actually strengthening under pressure. Instead of fracturing under stress, human Christmas spirit seemed to be consolidating and intensifying. The master reported during an emergency briefing. Our psychological warfare specialists are requesting permission to escalate to direct intervention protocols. The standard disruption techniques are not producing the expected emotional degradation. Considered this carefully. Direct intervention meant revealing his presence and abandoning any pretense of natural misfortune. It was a significant escalation that he had never needed to employ in previous operations. But the alternative was accepting failure, and that was unthinkable. Approved, he decided. Deploy the fear amplification broadcasts. Begin generating specific threats that will force humans to abandon their celebration plans entirely. If they will not surrender their joy willingly, we will make continuing their Christmas preparations too dangerous to contemplate. That night, strange signals began emanating from communication satellites that agents had compromised weeks earlier. The signals were designed to interact with human neurochemistry, amplifying feelings of anxiety and dread. Subliminal messages were embedded in television and radio broadcasts, suggesting that gathering for celebrations was dangerous. Social media algorithms were modified to promote stories of Christmas-related disasters and tragedies. The effects were immediate and dramatic. Within hours, Christmas event cancellations were being announced across the globe. Families were deciding to stay home rather than travel. Public celebrations were being postponed or canceled as organizers cited safety concerns. But in the small town of something different was happening. Emma had been experiencing vivid dreams every night since ship had arrived in Earth's orbit. In these dreams, she could see the sad man in the dark ship, and she could feel the terrible emptiness inside him. Each night, she would try to reach out to him, offering to share the warmth and joy that filled her own heart. "Daddy," Emma asked at dinner on December 20th, "why do some people try to take happiness away from others?" Her father, James, paused in cutting his daughter's food. The question was unexpectedly profound coming from a 6-year-old. "Well, sweetheart, sometimes when people are very hurt inside, They think that taking happiness from others will make them feel better, but it never really works. Well, because stealing happiness isn't the same as making your own happiness, Emma said with the matter-of-fact certainty that children sometimes possessed. The sad man in the spaceship doesn't understand that yet, but maybe we can show him. That night, as Emma prepared for bed, she did something that would have seemed impossible to anyone who witnessed it. She closed her eyes, focused all of her considerable 6-year-old concentration, and sent a message up to the ship orbiting above. "Hi, sad man," she whispered to her ceiling. "I know you're up there, and I know you're trying to take our Christmas away. But I want you to know that you can have some of mine if you want. I have so much happiness that I can share it with everybody." The 3,000 kilometers above was reviewing the day's operational reports when every alarm on his ship suddenly activated at once. His emotional sensors were detecting something that his instruments insisted was impossible. A directed beam of pure joy emanating from a single point on the planet's surface. The beam was so intense and focused that it actually registered on his ship's energy detection systems. More disturbing still, as the beam reached his ship, felt something he had not experienced in over 3 centuries. A moment of genuine happiness that wasn't stolen from someone else. The feeling lasted only seconds before his emotional defenses reasserted themselves. But the shock of it left him staring at his instruments in complete bewilderment. He barked, "What just happened?" His lieutenant was frantically checking readings across multiple sensor arrays. "Master, I'm detecting an energy emission from the planet's surface unlike anything in our databases. The source appears to be a single human child, but the power levels are inconsistent with known human capabilities." I stared at the display showing the source of the energy beam. It came from a small house in a small town where a little girl was supposed to be sleeping. According to his files, the child was named Emma, age 6. No special abilities listed in any human database. But somehow, this ordinary human child had just reached across 3,000 kilometers of space and touched something in that he thought had been destroyed forever. And for one brief, terrifying, wonderful moment, he had remembered what it felt like to be truly happy. As Emma drifted off to sleep below, She smiled and whispered one last message to the darkness above. Dee spent the entire night analyzing the impossible energy reading from Emma's location. His most advanced instruments confirmed what his mind refused to accept. A single human child had somehow projected emotional energy across 3,000 kilometers of space with enough intensity to penetrate his ship's shields and affect his own neurochemistry. Run the analysis again, he commanded for the 7th time as dawn broke over the small town below. His compound eyes dulled with exhaustion, but he obediently initiated another scan. Master, the results remain consistent. The energy signature is unlike anything in our databases. It appears to be pure emotional resonance, but the focus and intensity suggest capabilities far beyond documented human norms. Paced his command center like a caged predator. In 3 centuries of operations, he had never encountered anything that challenged the fundamental assumptions underlying his festival elimination protocol. Emotions were individual experiences that could be measured, manipulated, and harvested. They were not forces that could cross interplanetary distances or affect shielded starships. Yet Emma had somehow done exactly that. Master, ventured carefully, perhaps we should consider accelerating our timeline. If this human child possesses unusual abilities, she could potentially interfere with our harvesting operations. Interference from a 6-year-old child, muttered, the words tasting strange in his mouth. It sounds absurd when spoken aloud. But even as he dismissed the possibility, found himself unable to stop thinking about the moment when Emma's projected joy had touched him. For just an instant, the hollow ache that had defined his existence for centuries had vanished, replaced by something warm and bright and impossibly pure. The memory of that sensation was both wonderful and terrifying. Down in, Emma was experiencing her own confusion. She had been dreaming about the sad man in the spaceship for days, but last night felt different. For a brief moment, she had sensed something beyond his sadness, a spark of recognition, as if he had heard her message and felt something in response. Emma, breakfast? Her mother called from the kitchen. As Emma bounded down the stairs, she paused at the living room window to look up at the morning sky. She couldn't see the dark ship during daylight, but she could still sense its presence, like a shadow against the stars. He felt it, she whispered to herself, pressing her small hand against the glass. He felt the happiness I sent him. I think he's been sad for a very, very long time. Dr. Sarah watched her daughter from the kitchen doorway with growing concern. Emma had always been emotionally sensitive, but her preoccupation with some imaginary figure in space was becoming more intense each day. As a child psychologist, Sarah recognized the signs of a child working through complex emotions. But Emma's certainty about details that seemed far beyond her experience was troubling. "Emma, sweetheart," the doctor said as her daughter joined her in the kitchen. "Tell me more about your dreams about the sad man." Emma poured syrup on her pancakes with careful concentration before answering. "He's not really a dream, Mommy. He's real, and he's up there right now, trying to figure out how I was able to reach him. He's been stealing happiness from other planets for a really long time because he forgot how to make his own." The matter-of-fact way Emma delivered this information sent a chill down Doctor's spine. Her daughter wasn't speaking with the uncertainty typical of children describing dreams or fantasies. She sounded like someone reporting observable facts. "And you think you can help him?" the doctor asked carefully. Emma nodded enthusiastically. "Oh, yes. He just needs to remember that happiness works best when you share it. Like Christmas. That's why he's trying to take our Christmas away. Because he can see how much joy it creates, and he thinks if he takes it, he'll finally feel better. But it doesn't work that way." "Why doesn't it work that way?" the doctor found herself asking, despite her rational mind insisting this conversation was absurd. Because stolen happiness is like." Emma paused, searching for the right words. "It's like trying to keep sunlight in a jar. You can capture it for a little while, but it always fades away, and then you're left in the dark again. Real happiness has to grow inside you like a garden." High above was discovering the truth of Emma's words through direct experience. The moment of joy he had felt when her projected emotion reached him was already fading, leaving him with only the memory of what it had been like to feel genuine happiness. The stolen emotions stored in his ship's crystalline chambers suddenly seemed pale and artificial by comparison. "Increase surveillance on the residents," he ordered. "I want to understand how this child is able to do what she does. Over the next 48 hours, agents deployed every monitoring device at their disposal around Emma's house. They intercepted her communications, analyzed her brain wave patterns during sleep, and even tested the ambient energy fields around her location. What they discovered, all known science. Emma was not generating the emotional energy she was projecting. Instead, she seemed to be acting as a focal point for the collective joy and hope of her entire community. When she sent happiness towards ship, she was channeling the Christmas spirit of thousands of people and concentrating it into a coherent beam. "It's impossible," reported, his voice filled with confusion. "Individual organisms cannot channel collective emotional states. It violates every principle of psychic energy dynamics." But was beginning to understand something that his scientific instruments could not measure. Emma was not generating or channeling emotion through any supernatural ability. She was accomplishing something far more remarkable. She was demonstrating the true nature of human empathy in its form. Most sentient species experienced empathy as an abstract concept, an intellectual understanding of others' emotional states. But humans, and human children especially, could actually feel the emotions of others as if they were their own. Emma's unusual sensitivity allowed her to connect with the joy and hope of everyone around her, and her 6-year-old certainty that sharing happiness made it stronger rather than weaker allowed her to project those combined emotions with extraordinary focus. She's not using technology or psychic powers," murmured as he studied the latest analysis. "She's simply demonstrating what humans call love in its most concentrated form." This realization disturbed more than any weapon or threat he had ever faced. His entire worldview was built on the assumption that emotions were finite resources that diminished when shared. But Emma was proving that love and joy actually, when given away freely. On December 23rd, as Christmas approached its climax, made a decision that shocked even himself. Instead of remaining safely aboard his ship, he transported down to Earth's surface. Using a holographic disguise to appear human, he walked through the streets to observe their Christmas preparations firsthand. What he saw challenged every assumption he had developed about civilized behavior. Despite all the disruptions his agents had created, the humans were celebrating with even greater intensity than before. Families who couldn't afford expensive gifts were making handmade presents. Neighbors were sharing food when supply shortages affected their traditional Christmas meals. Children were performing in impromptu concerts when planned events were canceled. Most remarkably, the humans seemed genuinely happy about these changes. Instead of viewing the disruptions as tragedies, they were treating them as opportunities to rediscover what Christmas really meant to them. He found himself standing outside Emma's house as evening fell. Through the living room window, he could see the family decorating their Christmas tree. They had obviously been affected by his economic manipulations. The tree was smaller than normal, and the decorations were clearly homemade rather than purchased. But the joy radiating from the house was so intense that even his holographically disguised form could detect it. Emma was carefully placing a handmade angel on top of the tree when she suddenly turned toward the window. Her eyes met across the glass, and for a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, the 6-year-old girl and the ancient alien criminal simply looked at each other. Emma smiled, not with surprise or fear, but with recognition and welcome. She pressed her small hand against the window and mouthed words that could read through the glass. "I knew you would come." The simple gesture hit with more force than any weapon he had ever encountered. This child had been trying to reach him for days, offering him something he had spent centuries searching for, and instead of gratitude, he had responded by trying to destroy her happiness and that of her entire species. For the first time in 3 centuries, the Void Heart felt something that his advanced emotional conditioning could not suppress: shame. Emma disappeared from the window for a moment, then returned with a piece of paper that she held up to the glass. It was a drawing made with colored crayons, showing 2 figures, one tall and dark, one small and bright, holding hands under a starry sky. At the bottom, in a child's careful handwriting, were the words, "For my friend in the sad ship, Merry Christmas." As stared at the drawing, something inside him that had been frozen for centuries began to crack. The child had drawn him not as a monster or a threat, but as someone who could be helped, someone who could be saved. Emma opened the front door and stepped onto the porch, apparently unconcerned by the cold December air. She held out the drawing toward, her breath forming small clouds in the winter air. "I made this for you," she said simply. I know you're scared to be happy again because being happy means you might get hurt again. But Christmas is about remembering that love is stronger than sadness, even when sadness tries really, really hard to win. They found himself walking toward the porch, his disguise forgotten. With each step, the emotional defenses he had spent centuries building began to crumble. By the time he reached Emma, tears were streaming down his face, the first tears he had shed since his transformation into the void heart. "Why?" he asked, his voice breaking. "Why would you offer kindness to someone who has tried to destroy everything you care about?" Emma looked up at him with the infinite wisdom that sometimes appeared in children's eyes. "Because that's what Christmas means. It means that no one has to stay sad forever if they don't want to. And I don't think you really want to stay sad. I think you just forgot how to be anything else." As the little girl handed him the drawing, felt something impossible happen. The hollow space in his stood on the family's front porch, holding Emma's drawing with hands that trembled like autumn leaves. The holographic disguise that made him appear human flickered and failed as his emotional control systems overloaded. His true form was revealed, tall, angular, wrapped in robes that absorbed light itself, with glowing blue eyes that had not shed tears in 3 centuries. And Emma looked up at him without the slightest trace of fear. If anything, her smile grew brighter as she saw his real appearance. "You're much prettier than I imagined," she said with the absolute sincerity that only small children could manage. "Your eyes are like stars, sad stars, but still beautiful." The simple compliment from this tiny human hit harder than any weapon ever could. No one had called him beautiful in longer than many civilizations had existed. He had spent so long cultivating an image of darkness and fear that he had forgotten he had once been capable of inspiring anything else. "Emma, who's at the door?" Doctor's voice called from inside the house. The sad man from the spaceship, Mommy," Emma called back. "He came to visit for Christmas." I heard rapid footsteps approaching, followed by the sharp intake of breath as Doctor appeared in the doorway and saw his alien form. To her credit, she did not scream or run. Instead, she moved protectively in front of her daughter while maintaining a facade of calm. "Emma, step away from him and come inside," Doctor said, her voice tight with controlled fear. "It's okay, Mommy," Emma said, not moving from her position between her mother and the alien who had been terrorizing Earth for weeks. He's not dangerous anymore. The sadness is starting to go away. Looked at the fear in Doctor's eyes and felt another unfamiliar emotion. Regret. His actions had brought terror to this family, to this entire world, and yet this child was defending him to her own mother. Your daughter speaks the truth, said, his voice rougher than usual. I mean no harm to your family. I came to understand something that I thought was impossible. The doctor studied his face, searching for signs of deception. What she saw instead was pain so profound that it transcended species barriers. As a psychologist, she had learned to recognize trauma in many forms, but she had never seen anything quite like the anguish in this alien's glowing eyes. What do you want? She asked. Looked down at the drawing in his hands. A simple crayon picture of two figures holding hands under stars. I want to understand how your daughter knew that I needed help when I didn't know it myself. I want to understand how she could offer kindness to someone who has spent weeks trying to destroy her happiness. Because Christmas isn't about getting presents, Emma said matter-of-factly. It's about giving love to people who need it, even when they're being mean because they're hurting inside. James appeared behind his wife, clearly ready to protect his family from whatever threat had appeared at their door. But when he saw his daughter standing calmly next to an obviously non-human being, and when he heard the pain in that being's voice, his defensive posture softened slightly. Perhaps, Doctor said after a long moment, you should come inside. It's Christmas Eve, and no one should spend it alone on a porch in the cold. I stared at her in astonishment. You would invite someone like me into your home after what I have done. Emma seems to think you're ready to stop doing those things, Doctor replied. And my daughter has remarkable judgment about people's true nature. As they moved into the warmth of the family home, felt overwhelmed by sensations he had not experienced in centuries. The house radiated comfort and safety. The Christmas tree glowed with handmade ornaments that spoke of traditions passed down through generations. The scent of baking cookies filled the air, and somewhere in the background, soft music played songs about peace and goodwill. But most overwhelming was the emotional atmosphere. Joy, love, anticipation, and hope swirled through the house like visible currents. Unlike the sterile, extracted emotions stored in his ship's crystalline chambers, these feelings were alive and vibrant and endlessly renewable. Why? Asked as the family gathered around their living room, somehow naturally including him in their circle. Why do you celebrate Christmas when your world faces so many challenges? Why maintain hope when logic suggests despair would be more rational? James considered the question seriously. I suppose it's because we've learned that happiness isn't something that just happens to you. It's something you create through the choices you make and the way you treat other people. Christmas reminds us that even in dark times, we can choose to share light with each other. But surely you understand that resources are finite, protested. If you give your happiness to others, you have less for yourselves. Emma climbed onto his lap with the fearless confidence of childhood, apparently unconcerned by his alien appearance. That's silly, she said, settling against his chest as if she had known him all her life. Happiness isn't like toys or food. When you give it away, you get more back. Watch. She looked around the room at her parents, her face glowing with pure joy. I love you, Mommy and Daddy. I'm so happy we're together for Christmas. Immediately, Dr. and Mister's faces lit up with responsive happiness. Their joy at seeing their daughter's delight was clearly greater than any happiness they might have felt independently. See, Emma said too, I gave them happiness, but now I have even more because they're happy too. It's like magic, except it's real. I felt something shift inside his chest as he watched this simple demonstration. For 3 centuries, he had operated under the assumption that emotions were zero-sum resources. To gain happiness, someone else had to lose it. But Emma was showing him that love and joy operated by completely different rules. On my, said slowly, we believed that emotions made us vulnerable, that caring about others gave them power to hurt us. I lost someone very important to me, and the pain was so great that I decided never to feel that way again. Who did you lose? Emma asked with the direct curiosity of childhood. My daughter, whispered, the words scraping against his throat like broken glass. She was killed in a war when she was not much older than you. The grief nearly destroyed me, so I chose to destroy it first. I removed my ability to feel joy, love, hope, everything that reminded me of her. Emma's small hand found his much larger one. But that means you lost her twice, she said with devastating 6-year-old logic. Once when she died, and once when you forgot how to feel happy about the time you had with her. The truth of her words hit like a physical blow. He had spent 3 centuries running from grief, but in doing so, he had also run from every memory of joy his daughter had brought him. In trying to avoid pain, he had made it impossible to honor what he had lost. What was her name? The doctor asked gently. Lyra said, and for the first time in centuries, speaking her name brought warmth instead of agony. She loved festivals and celebrations. She would have been fascinated by your Christmas traditions. Then maybe, Emma said thoughtfully, she would want you to help make Christmas magical for other kids instead of taking it away from them. The suggestion was so simple and so obvious that wondered how he had missed it for so long. Instead of destroying the joy that reminded him of Lyra, he could create joy in her memory. Instead of spreading the darkness that had consumed him, he could share the light she had brought to his life. Emma, he said, his voice thick with emotions he was just beginning to remember how to feel. I have done terrible things to your world. I have tried to steal Christmas from everyone on Earth. How could I possibly make amends for such actions? Emma's face lit up with an idea so bright it was almost visible. You have a big spaceship, right? And lots of special technology. He nodded, uncertain where this was leading. Well, Emma said with the enthusiasm of a child who had just solved the world's problems. Christmas is tomorrow, and lots of families are sad because they can't be together or can't afford presents or can't travel to see each other because of all the bad stuff that's been happening. But if you have a spaceship, you could help fix all of that. What do you mean? Asked. Emma jumped up and began packing around the living room, her mind clearly working at full speed. You could transport people to be with their families. You could replicate presents for kids who won't have any. You could fix all the problems that are making Christmas sad for people. James looked thoughtful. You know, that's actually not a terrible idea. If you really want to make amends, helping restore the Christmas celebrations you disrupted would be a good start. But I have spent weeks creating chaos and fear, protested. People will not trust help coming from me. Then don't tell them it's coming from you, Doctor suggested. Let them think it's Christmas magic. Children believe in that anyway, and adults want to believe in it. Emma clapped her hands together. Yes, you could be like a real, but instead of just bringing toys, you could bring families together and fix all the sad parts of Christmas. For the first time in 3 centuries, found himself genuinely smiling. The idea of using his vast resources and advanced technology to create joy instead of destroying it felt revolutionary. More than that, it felt like something Lyra would have loved to help him do. It would be a massive undertaking, he said, but his voice carried excitement rather than reluctance. To reverse all the damage I have caused across your entire planet in a single night. Christmas magic is supposed to be impossible, Emma said with absolute certainty. That's what makes it Christmas magic. As Christmas Eve deepened outside the family home, began to understand that he had discovered something more valuable than all the stolen emotions in his ship's storage chambers. He had found a purpose beyond his own pain, and a way to transform centuries of darkness into light. I stood in the family's backyard, looking up at the stars where his ship waited in orbit. Emma held his hand, her small fingers warm against his cold alien skin. The transformation that had begun on their front porch was accelerating, but the hardest part still lay ahead, convincing his crew to abandon 3 centuries of carefully perfected evil and become agents of joy instead. I spoke into his communication device. Prepare the ship for immediate operations. We have a new mission. Though the response crackled through with confusion and static. Master, are you safe? Our sensors detected that you revealed your true form to the humans. Do you require extraction? Negative, replied, glancing down at Emma, who nodded encouragingly. I require something far more complex. Gather the command crew. I'm about to give orders that will sound impossible. 20 minutes later, materialized aboard his ship with Emma at his side. The family had insisted on coming along to help, and somehow their presence made the impossible seem merely difficult. The command crew assembled in the central chamber stared in shock at their master, accompanied by 4 humans, including a small child. Compound eyes reflected confusion and fear as he processed this unprecedented situation. The master ventured carefully. What are your orders? Well, we are going to fix Christmas, announced. In the next 8 hours, we will use every resource at our disposal to reverse the damage we have caused to Earth celebrations. We will transport stranded families, replicate missing gifts, repair disrupted services, and ensure that every human child wakes up to the Christmas morning they deserve. The silence filled the command chamber. Several crew members exchanged glances that suggested their master might have suffered some form of mental breakdown. The master said slowly, "Could you clarify your objectives? Are we helping the humans now? We are doing something we have never done before," replied. "We are creating joy instead of destroying it. And we are going to discover that making happiness is far more rewarding than stealing it." To demonstrate his commitment to this new mission, walked to the center of the chamber and activated his emotion harvesting array. But instead of draining emotions from the planet below, he began revering the process, releasing all the stored happiness, wonder, and love he had accumulated over 3 centuries of operations. The effect was immediate and profound. Crystalline storage chambers throughout the ship began glowing as concentrated joy flowed back toward its sources. On planets across 12 star systems, populations that had been emotionally numb for years suddenly felt the return of their capacity for happiness, hope, and love. The Master protested, "You're releasing our entire operational harvest, centuries of accumulated emotional energy." "Exactly," said, feeling lighter with each passing moment. "And we're going to replace it with something infinitely more valuable." Emma stepped forward, apparently unbothered by being surrounded by alien creatures that could have ended her existence without effort. "Hi, everyone. I'm Emma, and I'm here to help you learn about Christmas magic. Mister was really sad for a long time, but now he's remembering how to be happy again, and you can too." The doctor moved to her daughter's side, addressing the assembled aliens with professional calm. "What Emma means is that your master has discovered the difference between taking happiness and creating it. One leaves you empty and always needing more. The other fills you up and spreads to everyone around you." Looked back and forth between his master and the human child. "Master, this appears to be some form of psychological manipulation. These humans are using unknown methods to alter your behavioral patterns." They are using something called love, replied, and it is indeed altering my behavioral patterns. It is making me remember who I was before grief transformed me into a monster. To prove his point, activated his personal memory banks and projected holographic images into the air above them. The crew saw scenes from his life before his transformation, celebrations on his daughter Lyra laughing at festivals, moments of pure joy that had been buried under centuries of pain. This is who we could be, said as the images danced around the command chamber. This is who we could become again. And Emma walked up to and looked up at him with her characteristic fearless curiosity. "What makes you happy?" she asked. His compound eyes flickered with confusion. I do not understand the question. When was the last time you felt really good about something you did?" Emma persisted. The thought for a long moment before answering. Perhaps when we successfully evacuated a civilian population before their star went nova. We saved approximately 2 million beings. "See," Emma exclaimed. "You liked helping people. That made you feel good. So helping people for Christmas will make you feel even better." James stepped forward with a practical suggestion. "Why don't we start with a simple demonstration? Pick one stranded family and reunite them for Christmas. Let your crew see how it feels to create joy instead of destroying it." Nodded and activated his ship's sensors, scanning Earth for appropriate targets. Within moments, he found what he was looking for. A military family separated by deployment, with 3 young children who believed their father wouldn't make it home for Christmas. "There," said, highlighting the family on his holographic display. "The father is stationed on a base 3,000 kilometers from home. Weather conditions make conventional travel impossible. The children have written letters to asking only for their father to come home. Can your transport systems bring him here safely?" the doctor asked. "Easily," confirmed. "But how do we explain his sudden appearance?" Emma giggled. "Magic, obviously. Kids know that can do anything for Christmas." Within minutes, they had transported Sergeant Michael Torres from his military base in Alaska to his family's home in Georgia. The reunion, observed through the ship's sensors, was everything could have hoped for. The children's screams of joy when they saw their father, the tears of happiness from their mother, the pure magic of a family reunited for Christmas. It created more genuine emotional energy than had ever harvested from a single source. The crew watched in amazement as their emotional sensors detected the family's happiness radiating outward to affect their neighbors, their community, and eventually connecting with similar joy from families across the globe. The emotional resonance is incredible, murmured, studying the readings. It's generating exponentially increasing levels of positive energy. That's how love works, Emma explained patiently. It gets bigger when you share it. Inspired by their first success, the crew threw themselves into the most ambitious Christmas operation ever attempted. Using their advanced technology, they began systematically fixing every problem they had created, and many they hadn't. The stranded travelers found themselves mysteriously transported to their destinations, attributed to unusual weather patterns that helped rather than hindered. Families who couldn't afford Christmas gifts discovered anonymous donations that appeared to come from community organizations. Children's hospitals received advanced medical equipment that doctors assumed were early deliveries of expected shipments. The ship became the center of a massive coordination effort. His crew, initially reluctant, found themselves caught up in the infectious joy of creating happiness. They competed to find the most creative ways to help families, to solve Christmas disasters, to turn despair into delight. "Master," reported as Christmas morning approached, "our sensors are detecting something unprecedented. The emotional energy being generated by human Christmas celebrations is actually increasing the efficiency of our ship's systems. Joy appears to be a form of renewable energy source. More than that, realized as he studied the readings. It's teaching our technology to evolve. Our systems are becoming more efficient, more creative, more alive. Emma nodded as if this was perfectly obvious. Happy machines work better than sad machines. Everything works better when it's filled with love. As dawn broke over Earth on Christmas morning, stood in his observation deck watching the planet below. Cities twinkled with lights that seemed brighter than before. His sensors detected an unprecedented level of joy, gratitude, and love radiating from billions of humans as they celebrated with their families, opened their gifts, and shared meals together. But more remarkably, he could feel that joy resonating within himself and his crew. The hollow space in his chest that had defined him for centuries was gone, replaced by something warm and bright and endlessly renewable. He said as his lieutenant joined him at the observation deck. Prepare a message for transmission to our agent networks across the galaxy. Yes, Master. What are your instructions? Tell them that we have discovered something more valuable than stolen emotions. Tell them that we are no longer in the business of destroying joy. From now on, we create it. Emma appeared at his side, somehow having made her way through the ship to find him. She looked up at him with a smile that could have powered entire star systems. How do you feel?" she asked. Considered the question seriously. How did he feel? For the first time in 3 centuries, he felt whole. He felt purposeful. He felt like someone his daughter would have been proud of. I feel like I've remembered what Christmas magic really means, he said finally. What's that? Emma asked. It means that no one has to stay broken forever. It means that love is stronger than loss. And it means that the best way to honor someone you've lost is to help create the kind of joy they would have wanted to see in the world. As Earth completed its rotation and Christmas Day settled over the planet, began planning their next mission. There were other worlds, other civilizations that had lost their capacity for celebration. Other beings like himself who had forgotten how to hope. It would take time to undo 3 centuries of damage. But for the first time in longer than some civilizations had existed, the void heart, now perhaps the joy bringer, had something better than time. He had purpose. He had love. And he had learned from a 6-year-old human child that the best gifts were the ones you gave away. Looking down at Earth, where millions of families were sharing their Christmas morning together, smiled and began planning how to bring that same magic to the stars. After all, the galaxy was a big place, and everyone deserved to experience the wonder of Christmas morning at least once in their lives. Even ancient alien criminals who had forgotten how to laugh. Especially them. But first, he had one more impossible thing to do. He had to call his ship and convince his crew to help him become something they had never imagined possible. a force for joy in the galaxy instead of a source of despair. At chest, the void that had defined him for centuries began to fill with something warm and bright and indescribably precious. It was not stolen emotion forcibly extracted from unwilling victims. It was freely given love from a child who had somehow seen past his darkness to find something worth saving. For the first time in 300 years, the void heart remembered what it felt like to hope. Worry, sad man. Christmas is coming and everything is going to be okay. L3 centuries of carefully constructed emotional armor. Eliminated every festival, every moment of collective happiness across 12 star systems. But humans were new to the galaxy, and human children, well, they possessed something that even the most advanced alien civilizations had forgotten. This is the story of how one laugh from one small human changed the fate of every world under distant suns.